Alara Voss had never been one to shy away from solitude. At 32, she thrived in the quiet corners of the world, far from the bustling crowds of her former life in the city. After a messy divorce that left her questioning every relationship she'd ever had, she sought refuge in a remote cabin nestled in the Appalachian foothills. The place was rustic, a single-story log home with a wraparound porch surrounded by dense forests that whispered secrets on windy days. It was perfect for her new career as a freelance illustrator, where she could lose herself in sketches of fantastical landscapes without interruption. The evening the storm hit, Alara was deep into her work. Her tablet glowed softly in the dim light of the living room, casting elongated shadows across the wooden walls. Outside, the wind had begun to howl, carrying the scent of impending rain through the cracked window. She glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. The forecast had warned of severe weather, but she dismissed it. Storms were common here, and she'd grown accustomed to their symphony. The patter of rain on the tin roof, the distant rumble that echoed like a giant's footsteps. As the first drops fell, Alara saved her progress and stood to stretch. Her ex-husband Marcus had always mocked her love for storms, calling it morbid fascination. But to her, they were cathartic, washing away the residue of bad memories. She moved to the kitchen, flicking on the kettle for tea. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like impatient fingers. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the cabin's foundation. Alara smiled faintly. This was her element. But then, amid the chaos, she heard it. A faint scratching at the door. At first, she thought it was a branch scraping in the wind. She peered through the small window beside the entrance, but the porch was empty, shrouded in darkness. Lightning flashed, illuminating the trees bending unnaturally, their leaves thrashing like wild animals. Shrugging it off, she returned to the kitchen, pouring hot water over a chamomile bag. The scratching returned, more insistent this time, accompanied by a low whine that sounded almost human. Heart-quickening, Alara approached the door again. "Hello?" she called, her voice barely audible over the storm. No response. She hesitated, then turned the knob, cracking the door open. A gust of wind slammed it wide, rain pelting her face. On the porch mat lay a small, sodden envelope, its edges curling from the moisture. She snatched it up and retreated inside, locking the door behind her. The envelope was unmarked, sealed with wax that had partially melted. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the ink smudged, but legible. "Do you remember the promise?" Alara frowned. Promise? She had no idea what it meant. Perhaps a neighbor's note blown astray? The nearest house was miles away, though. Unsettled, she crumpled it and tossed it into the trash, attributing it to the wind's whimsy. As the night wore on, the storm grew fiercer. Power flickered, then died, plunging the cabin into blackness. Alara lit a candle, its flame dancing erratically. She tried to read a book, but her mind wandered back to the note. Who could have left it, and in this weather? A branch thudded against the roof, startling her. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate, circled the cabin. She froze, listening. They paused at the back window, then resumed, growing fainter. Grabbing her phone, she dialed her sister Lena, who lived in the valley below. No signal. The storm had knocked out service. Panic bubbled up, but Alara pushed it down. She was independent, capable. Arming herself with a fireplace poker, she crept to the window. Lightning revealed nothing but swirling rain. The footsteps returned, closer now, accompanied by a whisper carried on the wind. "Promise. Remember." Alara's blood chilled. It sounded like a child's voice, distorted and ethereal. Memories flooded back, unbidden fragments from her childhood. She and her best friend Tilly had made a pact one stormy night in these very hills, swearing eternal friendship under a lightning-struck oak. But Tilly had vanished that summer, lost in the woods during a family hike. Alara had blocked it out, moving on with life, but now the whispering grew louder, morphing into a plea. Alara backed away, heart pounding. A knock echoed at the door, 3 sharp raps. She didn't move. The knob rattled as if someone tested it. "Go away," she shouted, voice trembling. Silence, then a scrape at the window. Peering out, she saw a small handprint on the glass, smeared by rain. It was child-sized, fingers splayed in desperation. Alara gasped, dropping the poker. The storm raged, thunder drowning her screams as the whispers infiltrated her mind. "You promised to find me." She barricaded the door with a chair, huddling in the corner until dawn. When the sun rose, the storm had passed, leaving puddles and fallen branches. The handprint was gone, washed away. But on the porch, another note awaited. "I waited. Now you will too." Alara never forgot. She left the cabin soon after, but the whispers followed her in every storm, a reminder of a promise broken and a friend lost to the hollow's embrace. The guilt gnawed at her, turning solitude into isolation. And on stormy nights, she wondered if Tilly was still out there, waiting in the rain. In the humid depths of Louisiana's bayou country, where cypress trees draped in Spanish moss guarded ancient secrets, lived Harlan Reed and his daughter Mia. Harlan, a widowed fisherman in his late 40s, had raised Mia alone since her mother drowned in a flash flood years ago. Their home was a modest stilt house on the water's edge, elevated against the frequent floods. Mia, now 8, shared her father's love for the wild, catching fireflies, listening to the frogs' chorus, and watching storms from their screened porch. One sweltering July evening, the air hung heavy with moisture. Dark clouds gathered over the swamp, promising relief from the heat. Harlan and Mia prepared their ritual, popcorn in a bowl, blankets on the porch swing. "Gonna be a doozy tonight, kiddo," Harlan said, ruffling Mia's hair. She grinned, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. As thunder grumbled in the distance, they settled in. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the twisted branches like skeletal fingers. The rain began softly, then built to a torrent, slapping the water below. Wind whistled through the moss, creating eerie moans. Mia pointed excitedly. "Look, Daddy! The lights are dancing!" Harlan followed her gaze. Amid the trees, faint orbs flickered. Will-o'-the-wisps, he thought, common in the bayou. But as the storm intensified, a shape emerged from the mist. A silhouette, tall and slender, wading through the shallows toward their home. It moved with unnatural grace, unaffected by the wind. "Daddy, who's that?" Mia whispered, clutching his arm. Harlan squinted. "Stay put, Mia. Probably a lost hunter." But doubt crept in. No one ventured this deep without a boat, especially in a storm. He grabbed his shotgun from inside, loading it quietly. The figure drew closer, its features obscured by shadows. Lightning revealed a woman in a flowing dress, hair plastered to her face, resembling Harlan's late wife, Eliza. His breath hitched. It couldn't be. Eliza had perished in these waters, her body never recovered. The figure stopped at the base of the stilts, looking up. "Harlan," a voice carried on the wind, soft and accusatory. Mia whimpered. "Mommy." "No, sweetie, that's not her." Harlan's hands shook as he aimed the gun. The woman began climbing the supports, her movements jerky like a puppet on strings. Rain cascaded off her, but she didn't slip. "Go inside, Mia," Harlan barked. Mia fled, slamming the door. The woman reached the porch, her eyes hollow pits. "You let me go," she hissed, voice overlapping with thunder. Harlan fired a warning shot into the air. The figure paused, then lunged. He backed away, tripping over the swing. As she loomed over him, lightning struck nearby, revealing not Eliza, but a decayed form, skin sloughing off like wet paper. In terror, Harlan swung the gun like a club, connecting with her side. She dissolved into mist, vanishing with a wail that echoed through the bayou. Shaken, he rushed inside to Mia, who sobbed in the corner. The storm subsided by morning, but the encounter lingered. Harlan searched the waters, finding an old locket. Eliza's, lost the night she died. Inside, a faded photo of them, inscribed, "Forever in the depths." From then on, storms brought whispers from the water, and Harlan wondered if Eliza's spirit sought closure or revenge for not saving her. He and Mia moved away, but the bayou shadows followed, a testament to unresolved grief. In the rolling hills of New England, where autumn leaves painted the landscape in fiery hues, Julia Kane moved into an old Victorian house. A historian by trade, Julia, 41, was drawn to its history. A former inn from the 1800s, abandoned after a tragic fire. She saw it as a project, a way to heal from the loss of her brother, who died in a car accident 2 years prior. The house was grand, with high ceilings and an attic full of relics. Julia spent days sorting through dusty trunks, uncovering diaries and artifacts. One entry mentioned a young boy, Oliver, who perished in a storm trapped in the attic. As winter approached, a nor'easter brewed. Snow mixed with rain, winds battering the shutters. Julia was in the study, transcribing notes, when the power surged. A creak from above, the attic door swinging open. Curious, she ascended the narrow stairs. The attic was frigid, wind whistling through cracks. A rocking chair swayed gently, as if recently occupied. "Hello?" Julia called, laughing at her foolishness. Then a child's laughter echoed, followed by sobs. Lightning flashed through the skylight, revealing a boyish figure in the corner, huddled and translucent. Julia's research revealed Oliver had been locked in during a storm by accident, his cries unheard over the gale. Now his spirit relived the terror. New twist, Oliver's ghost mistakes Julia for his sister, begging for release. She must recreate the night, unlocking a hidden compartment to free his soul, but it requires facing her own guilt over her brother's death. Extended scenes, Julia's nightmares blending with Oliver's memories, conversations with a local archivist, a near-fatal fall during the storm. Story 4. The Highway Phantom. On the arid plains of the American Southwest, where dust storms could blind drivers for miles, Tomas Ruiz drove his truck route. A long-haul driver, Tomas, 55, had seen his share of oddities, coyotes in headlights, mirages under the sun. But nothing prepared him for the monsoon that night. Rain turned the highway into a river, thunder shaking his cab. In the beam of his lights, a figure in black robes stood, unmoving. Thomas swerved, stopping short. The figure approached, revealing an elderly man with eyes like storm clouds. "You owe me a ride," he rasped. Storms have a way of stripping away the illusions of safety we build around ourselves. They roar in, uninvited, and in their wake, they leave us questioning what we thought we knew about the world and ourselves. The tales I'm about to share are born from that chaos, where the line between the living and the lost blurs under sheets of rain and flashes of lightning. These are stories of ordinary people caught in extraordinary tempests, facing shadows that no forecast could predict. Grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and let the thunder roll. Remember, the real fear isn't the storm. It's what it brings with it. Kira Landon had always been a creature of habit, finding comfort in the predictable rhythm of small-town life. At 28, she worked as a librarian in the quaint village of Willowbrook, nestled in the rolling hills of the Pacific Northwest. The library was her sanctuary, filled with the scent of aged paper and the quiet hum of readers lost in their worlds. After a childhood marked by her parents' bitter separation, Kira craved stability. She lived alone in a cozy cottage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by evergreen forests that seemed to guard her from the outside world. One crisp October evening, as the leaves turned gold and crimson, Kira noticed the sky darkening earlier than usual. The weather app on her phone buzzed with alerts, a severe thunderstorm approaching, with high winds and potential flooding. She dismissed it with a shrug. Storms were part of life here, and she'd weathered plenty. After closing the library, she drove home, the first drops of rain speckling her windshield like tears. Inside her cottage, Kira lit a few candles. Power outages were common, and settled into her favorite armchair with a novel about lost explorers. The rain began in earnest, a gentle tapping that soon escalated to a relentless assault on the roof. Wind whistled through the eaves, making the old house creak like an aging ship. Thunder boomed in the distance, growing closer with each rumble, vibrating through the floors. Kira paused her reading, a slight unease stirring in her chest. She wasn't afraid of storms. In fact, they reminded her of childhood nights spent under blankets, listening to her grandmother's tales of ancient folklore. But tonight felt different. The air was heavier, charged with an electricity that prickled her skin. She rose to close the curtains, peering out into the night. The forest was a wall of black, broken only by occasional lightning strikes that illuminated twisted branches like claws. As she turned away, a soft thud sounded from the front door. Kira froze. It could be a fallen branch, she thought, but curiosity won out. She approached cautiously, flipping on the porch light. Through the peephole, she saw nothing but rain-slicked steps. Opening the door a crack, a gust of wind pushed it wider, and something fluttered in, a small, damp card, landing at her feet. She picked it up, heart beating a little faster. It was a handmade bookmark, embroidered with delicate threads forming the words, "Did you keep your word?" Kira's brow furrowed. She had no idea what it meant. Perhaps a prank from a library patron? Or maybe it had blown from a neighbor's yard, though the nearest house was a mile away. She pocketed it and locked the door, trying to shake off the oddity. The storm intensified, lightning flashing like strobes in a nightmare. Kira tried to return to her book, but her mind wandered. Memories surfaced unbidden. Her best friend from elementary school, Nora. They had been inseparable, sharing secrets under the old willow tree in the village park. One stormy afternoon, they'd made a vow to always protect each other, no matter what. But Nora had moved away suddenly after her family faced financial ruin. And Kira, young and self-absorbed, had let the friendship fade without a fight. She hadn't thought of Nora in years. A scratching noise interrupted her thoughts, coming from the back window. Kira's pulse quickened. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and approached. Shining the beam outside, she saw only rain and swaying trees. But then, a shadow shifted, just beyond the light's reach. It looked like a person, hunched against the wind, watching her. "Who's there?" Kira called, her voice lost in the thunder. No answer. She backed away, phone in hand, but the signal bars were gone. The scratching returned, now at the side door. Panic rising, she barred it with a chair and retreated to the living room. Hours passed, or so it seemed. The power cut out, leaving her in candle-lit darkness. The storm's fury peaked, wind howling like mournful cries. Then a knock, slow and deliberate, at the front door. Kira's breath caught. She didn't move. The knock repeated, louder. Gathering courage, she crept forward and looked through the peephole. A figure stood there, cloaked in a rain-soaked coat, face hidden by a hood. "Go away! I'm calling the police!" she shouted, though she knew she couldn't. The figure didn't budge. Instead, a voice filtered through the door, faint but clear. Kira, the vow. Terror gripped her. How did they know her name? She ran to the kitchen, grabbing a heavy skillet for protection. The knocking stopped, but footsteps circled the house, squelching in the mud. Kira followed from window to window, flashlight trembling. At the bedroom pane, lightning revealed the intruder's face, pale with eyes full of accusation. It was Nora, or what looked like her, aged but unchanged. Her expression a mix of sorrow and rage. Kira stumbled back, dropping the skillet. "This isn't real," she whispered. But the memories flooded in. Nora's letters she'd ignored, the pleas for help after her family's troubles. Kira had promised to be there, but she turned away, too caught up in her own life. The footsteps paused at the back door. A note slipped under it. "You forgot. Now I can't rest." Kira's hands shook as she read it. The storm raged on, but inside, a different tempest brewed. Guilt. She opened the door, rain lashing her face. "Nora, I'm sorry." The figure emerged from the shadows, not attacking but extending a hand. "Help me find peace," it whispered. In a trance, Kira followed into the forest, the storm guiding them to the old willow tree. There, buried in the roots, was a time capsule they'd made as kids, letters, trinkets, and their vow written on faded paper. As Kira dug it up, lightning struck the tree, splitting it. The figure faded, a smile on its lips. Kira returned home drenched, the capsule clutched tight. The storm cleared, but the experience changed her. She tracked down the real Nora, now living in a distant city, and rekindled their friendship. Yet on stormy nights, Kira heard whispers in the wind, a reminder that vows once broken leave echoes that time can't fully silence. Expanding with details, Kira's internal monologue on guilt, flashbacks to childhood scenes with Nora. A new twist where Kira discovers Nora had passed away years ago in a storm-related accident, making the apparition a manifestation of her unresolved remorse. Add scenes of Kira visiting the library the next day, researching local ghost legends, and a phone call with her mother revealing Nora's fate. This adds depth and length. The rain had stopped by dawn, but Kira couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, the time capsule open before her. Inside were yellowed notes, a pressed flower, and a photo of two girls laughing under the willow. Tears welled as she remembered their last conversation. Nora begging her to visit, Kira too busy with school. The guilt had festered, buried like the capsule. She drove to the library, her mind racing. In the archives, she found an old newspaper clipping. A local woman perishes in flood, body never found. Nora had been caught in a storm while hiking, much like their childhood adventures. The article mentioned survivors hearing her calls for help, unanswered. Kira's hands trembled. Was the apparition a ghost or her conscience? She called her mother, who confirmed the news she'd kept hidden to spare Kira pain. "You were so young," her mother said. "I thought you'd forget." But forgetting had been the problem. Kira visited the willow, now charred but standing. She buried a new note. "I remember. Forgive me." Peace settled over her, but the storms always brought a chill, a whisper that vows bind souls beyond the grave. In the lush valleys of Central California, where vineyards stretched like green oceans, resided Victor Hale and his son Theo. Victor, a 45-year-old vineyard owner, had inherited the family business after his wife's passing from illness 5 years prior. Theo, 10 years old, was a curious boy with a passion for stargazing, often dragging his father to the hilltop grove for nights under the sky. Their home was a sprawling ranch house, backed by rows of grapes in an ancient oak grove that locals called the Watcher's Grove for its eerie reputation. A late spring storm was forecast, the kind that brought much-needed rain, but also flash floods. Victor and Theo prepared their tradition, telescopes on the covered patio, hot cocoa in thermoses. "This one's gonna be epic, Dad," Theo said, eyes bright. Victor nodded, hiding his worry. Storms reminded him of the night his wife Sophia had her final seizure during a downpour, the ambulance delayed by flooded roads. As clouds gathered, they set up. Lightning danced on the horizon, thunder rolling like distant drums. Rain started as a mist, then poured in curtains. Wind rustled the vines, creating a symphony of whispers. Theo pointed to the grove. "Look, Dad, something's moving." Victor squinted. Through the rain, a form stood among the oaks, tall, cloaked, motionless. "Probably a deer," he said, but his voice wavered. The figure didn't move like an animal, stared directly at them. Theo gripped his arm. "It's a person." Victor fetched binoculars. The figure was a woman, dress billowing, hair wild. She resembled Sophia, but that was impossible. "Stay here," Victor instructed, grabbing a lantern and raincoat. He trekked to the grove, mud sucking at his boots. "Hello, are you okay?" No response. The woman turned, vanishing into the trees. Victor pursued, branches whipping his face. Deeper in, he found a clearing with a stone marker, Sophia's memorial, where he'd scattered her ashes. The figure reappeared, whispering, "You promised to let me go." Victor's heart stopped. Sophia had made him vow to move on after her death, not to cling to grief. But he had, raising Theo in isolation, avoiding new connections. The figure approached, touch cold as rain. "Release me." Victor fled, returning to Theo. The storm peaked, flooding the patio. Theo cried, "She was at the window." Victor barricaded the house. That night, dreams plagued him. Sophia trapped in the grove, calling. Morning brought clarity. He researched the grove's history, a site of old rituals where spirits of the unfulfilled lingered during storms. Twist. Victor confronts the spirit by burning old letters from Sophia, symbolizing release. The figure dissipates, but Theo reveals he saw Mom too, urging Victor to date again. Extended scenes. Victor's conversations with Theo about loss, a visit from a neighbor sharing grove legends, a flood sequence where they rescue a stranded animal, mirroring Sophia's fate. Victor sat with Theo as the rain eased. "I think your mom wants us to be happy," he said. Theo nodded. "She's watching, but in a good way now." They visited the grove together, planting a new oak. Storms still came, but the Watcher was gone, replaced by a sense of freedom. Amid the bustling suburbs of the Midwest, in a town called Oak Ridge, Elena Torres rented a colonial-style home to start anew. A 35-year-old graphic designer, Elena had fled a toxic job in the city, seeking inspiration in the quiet neighborhood. The house was affordable, with a spacious office and a mysterious cellar she'd barely explored, dark with shelves of forgotten jars and tools. An early fall gale approached, winds howling through the chimneys. Elena worked late, designing logos, the rain a soothing backdrop. But a rumbling from below interrupted her, the cellar door rattling as if something pushed from inside. Curious, she descended, flashlight in hand. The air was dank, dust motes dancing. At the far wall, a loose panel revealed a hidden chamber, sealed with a chain. A low moan echoed like wind but human. Elena pried it open, finding a small room with a dusty cotton wall scratched with dates. A journal lay open. Entries from a man named Elias, trapped during a storm in 1920, his family unaware, starving as the gale raged. The moans grew, a spectral form appearing, an emaciated man, eyes pleading. "Free me from the echo." Elena fled, but the spirit followed, manifesting in mirrors, whispering of forgotten isolation. Twist. Elias was her great-granduncle, and the house held family secrets of abandonment. To banish him, Elena must read his journal aloud during the next storm, acknowledging the past. Scenes. Elena's research at the local historical society calls to relatives uncovering the story, a power outage where the spirit guides her to hidden letters, a resolution where she renovates the chamber into a memorial. Elena stood in the rain, journal in hand. "You're hurt now," she said. The spirit faded, peace restored. But storms brought faint echoes, reminders of hidden pains. In the vast deserts of Arizona, where canyons carved ancient stories, Layla Gomez drove her SUV on nightly deliveries for her catering business. At 50, Layla was resilient, having survived a heart-wrenching loss, her son to a hiking accident in a sudden sandstorm. The roads were lonely, but she found solace in the stars. A monsoon hit unexpectedly, rain turning dust to mud. In her headlights, a boy stood, waving. Layla stopped, heart racing. It looked like her son Diego. "Mom?" the figure called. Layla exited, rain soaking her. The boy led her to a canyon edge, revealing a cave with Diego's backpack lost years ago. The figure was a guardian spirit, guiding lost items back. Twist. The spirit tests Layla's forgiveness for not searching harder, creating illusions of the accident. She must relive it, accepting fate to find closure. Scenes. Flashbacks to Diego's life, radio interference with his voice, a rescue from flooding, ending with Layla founding a search group. Storms now brought hope, not fear, as Layla drove on, the mirage a blessing in disguise. And there you have it, 4 tales to haunt your thoughts. If these chilled you, like and share. Subscribe for more, and share your stories below. Stay dry and remember, the storm always passes, but what it reveals might stay forever.